The night was quiet, but it did not feel safe. A thin moon hung over the hills like a sickle. Wind moved through dry grass and made a soft hiss, as if the land tried to whisper a warning. In the small border village of Namar, a young man named Aris walked along the empty lane. He was 20 summers old, tall and lean, with dark hair that always fell over his eyes. His clothes were plain and his hands were hard from work. He carried a bundle of wood on his back, and the straps cut into his shoulders. He did not complain. He had learned long ago that pain was part of life. It taught you what to avoid, and it taught you what to endure. Aris lived with his mother in a small mud brick house near the old well. His father had been a soldier once, before the empire of Selvar swallowed the free lands and demanded new taxes from every farm and every field. One winter, soldiers had come to collect grain. There was nothing left to give. His father stood tall and said no. A blade flashed. Snow turned red. No court, no words. Only the order of the empire and the silence that followed. Since that day, Aris had kept his head down. He worked in the fields by day and mended tools at night. He spoke little, smiled less, and saved his anger like a man who keeps a coal hidden under ash, waiting for the right time to stir it back to fire. On that quiet night, the coal turned hot. Aris heard the first scream from the far edge of the village. It was a sharp, short sound like something broken. He dropped the wood at once. Another scream came, and then a shout, and then the clash of steel. Fire lifted in the darkness, a yellow tongue licking the sky. Aris ran. His feet hit the dirt road, and dust rose behind him. He passed the old well, the mill, the hut with the goat tied to a peg, and he saw at the end of the lane a squad of Selvar soldiers. They were kicking doors and pulling people out. One soldier set a roof on fire with a torch. Another laughed. A third shoved a boy into the mud and pressed his boot on the boy's neck. Aris did not have a sword. He had a shovel by the door of his house, but that was far now, and there was no time to run back. He looked around and saw a long pole, part of a fence. He broke it free. The wood was rough and heavy. It would do. He gripped it with both hands and moved forward, slow, steady, like a hunter walking through tall grass. His heart beat hard, not from fear, but from a strange, cold anger. He felt it fill him, clear and sharp, like water from a mountain stream. The first soldier turned and saw him. "Back away, farm rat," the man said in a lazy voice. He had a chain at his neck and a fat belly under his leather. His sword was already in his hand, but he held it low, careless. Aris did not speak. He stepped in, slid to the left, and drove the pole into the man's knee. There was a crack. The soldier roared and fell. Before the man could rise, Aris swung the pole across his temple. Bone met wood. The soldier dropped, eyes empty. The other soldiers shouted and came at him. Aris moved by instinct. The pole was longer than their swords, and his arms were strong from work. He struck hands, wrists, knees. He kept the blows clean and simple. He did not fight like a trained man. He fought like a man who would not die lying down. A blade cut his forearm. He felt the sting, but he did not fall back. He spun the pole and caught another man across the jaw. Teeth flew. The soldier toppled. There were 4 left. One had a scar from ear to mouth. He raised a horn and blew. The sound carried across the village, a harsh note that promised more trouble. Aris lunged for him, but another soldier stepped in and parried the pole with the flat of his sword. Steel bit the wood. The pole splintered and broke in Aris's hands. He now held only a jagged half. The soldier grinned, eager. He lifted his sword to strike. Aris stepped into the blow, too close for the blade to cut clean, and smashed the broken end into the soldier's throat. The man gagged and fell. Someone grabbed Aris from behind. Arms locked around his chest. He slammed his head back, felt a nose break, twisted free, and struck low with the broken wood. The man cried out and folded to his knees. Aris kicked him aside and turned, only to freeze as he saw a torch arc through the air toward his mother's house. It hit the thatch roof. Fire bloomed at once, dry straw turning bright, hungry, fast. "Mother!" Aris ran. Behind him, boots pounded. A soldier laughed. "Run, little rat," he called. "Burn with her!" Aris reached the door and kicked it open. Smoke rolled out. He dropped low and pushed inside. The house was small. 1 room, 2 beds, a table, some pots. Fire crawled along the ceiling like red snakes. "Mother!" he shouted again. He found her on the floor near the bed, coughing, eyes closed. He lifted her in his arms. She was light, too light. He had not noticed before, or perhaps he had refused to see. He carried her outside into the cool night air and set her by the well. She opened her eyes and tried to speak, but the smoke had scraped her throat raw. She touched his cheek, gentle. He took her hand and kissed it. "I will be back," he said. "Stay here." "Do not move! Soldiers closed around the well." The man with the scar raised his sword toward Eris's mother. The message was clear: move and she dies. Eris felt something inside him go very still. Then it broke. "Leave her," he said. His voice was calm, but it cut the air. The scarred man smiled and shook his head. He drew the flat of his blade across the stone lip of the well, slow and taunting. Sparks fell and died. Eris looked at the broken pole in his hand. It would not be enough now. He dropped it. For a moment he felt empty. Then he saw the old thing by the well. It was a sword, sealed in a rusted iron sheath, tied with cracked leather. It had hung there for years, part of a story the village told to scare children. They said an ancestor had found it at the foot of the northern mountains. They said it was cursed. They said it belonged to a king who never died. Eris had never believed any of it. But the sword was real, and steel did not care about stories. Steel cut. He pulled at the straps. They gave way like rot. He gripped the hilt and pulled. For a moment it stuck, as if the blade did not want to leave its sleep. Then it came free with a sound like a deep breath after a long time underwater. The sword was not rusted. It was clean, bright, and cold. The moonlight ran along its edge and seemed to cling there. The grip fit his hand too well, like a friend who had waited. A faint line of letters glowed along the blade. He could not read them. He did not need to. The soldiers paused. Even the scarred man took a small step back. "That is an old thing," he said, trying to sound brave. "Put it down." Eris did not put it down. He lifted the sword and felt with a shock that it was light. Lighter than wood, lighter than air. It moved with him, not against him. He swung it once just to test. The cut was so fast that the flame above the well seemed to bend away from it. Something like a low hum pulsed through the night, too soft to call a sound, more like a feeling in the bones. The scarred man roared and charged. Eris did not think. He stepped aside and drew the sword up in a single smooth arc. The blade kissed the man's armor. The metal opened like cloth. The man froze, eyes wide, as if he could not believe his body had been cut. He fell in two neat parts. The cut so clean that for one breath the pieces still held together, then slid apart. Silence fell. Even the fire seemed to hush. The others ran. Eris did not follow. He dropped to his knees by his mother. She stared at the sword and then at him. A strange light was in her eyes, a mix of fear and pride. Her hand trembled as she reached for his face again. "Your father," she whispered, the word rough and thin. He knew there was more. "Do not speak," Eris said. "Save your strength." He looked around. The roof of their house had collapsed. Flames were eating the beams. Ash fell like gray snow. The village was hurt, but not dead yet. Some people were fighting the fires with buckets. Others cried for loved ones. The air smelled of smoke and iron. Hoofbeats came from the road. A dozen more soldiers rode into the square. At their head was a captain in black armor with silver seams. His helmet was shaped like a hawk's head. He saw the dead and the burning houses, and his face twisted with anger. He pointed his sword at Eris. "You," he said. "Drop the blade," Eris stood. He felt tired, but the sword in his hand did not feel tired at all. It felt strong, awake, eager. He took one step forward, then another. He should have been afraid. Instead, he felt a deep calm, like standing in a field before a storm and knowing the rain will fall no matter what you do. He looked at the captain and spoke in a clear voice that carried across the square. "You came to break us," he said. "You will not," the captain laughed, a short, hard sound. He flicked his reins. The riders spread out. Bows lifted. Eris knew he could not stop arrows with strength alone. He raised the sword. The letters along the blade flared brighter, as if answering his fear. He did not know the right words. He did not know any words at all. But the sword knew. The first arrow flew. Eris moved the blade without thinking. It brushed the arrow aside. The second came, and the third, and then a dark rain. Steel sang. Arrows cracked and fell like sticks. The riders slowed, uncertain. The captain scowled and lowered his lance, meaning to crush Eris under a charge. He kicked his horse. The beast leaped forward. Morning came slow to Namar. The smoke lifted in thin lines. Ash lay on roofs and on the well stones like gray snow. People moved with quiet steps. They carried water, wrapped the dead, and held each other without words. A few children helped, their faces small and hard. The night had made them older. Eris worked with the others. He tied a cloth around his cut arm and did not stop. He pulled beams from a burning wall. He lifted stones and set them aside. He fetched water and passed it down the line. When someone cried, he put a hand on their shoulder and did not leave until they could stand again. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a man doing what needed to be done. The sword, last light, lay across his knees when he rested. He kept it close, but he wrapped it in an old blanket so people would not stare at it the whole time. Still they looked, some with fear, some with hope, some with both. He did not blame them. He was afraid too. Not of the blade, of what it meant. Near noon, the elders called him to the square. Only 4 elders remained now. They were tired and black with soot. Old Ferris spoke first. His voice shook. "The Empire will return," he said. "They will come with more men. They will burn what is left." A woman named Leia nodded. "You saved us, Eris," she said. "But your sword also painted a mark on our door. If you stay, we all will pay." Eris knew they were right. He looked at his mother. She sat on a bench by the well, wrapped in a shawl. Her eyes were clear. She gave him a small nod. It was a hard thing, but it was the truth. "I will leave before sunset," Eris said. "I will take the road north. I will draw their eyes away from Namar." A few people protested. "We need you here." "What if they come early?" Eris raised his hand. "I will go now then," he said. "Before noon." His mother's mouth trembled for a moment, then went firm. He could see she wanted to argue. She did not. She had the courage to let him go. He went to her first. He knelt. She took his face in both hands and studied it as if she wanted to write it into her heart. "Your father would be proud," she whispered. "But do not try to be him. Be you." He smiled a little. "I do not know who that is yet." "You will learn." She pulled a small leather cord from her neck. A flat bronze coin hung from it, worn smooth by time. "This is your father's charm," she said. "He said it kept him safe once when arrows fell like rain. Maybe it was only chance. But chance is also a kind of help. Take it." He took it and tied it around his neck. It lay warm on his skin, heavy for its size. He kissed her hands. "I will return," he said. "You will change," she answered. "Return anyway." He stood, wrapped the sword again, and packed a small bag, a water skin, a heel of bread, a wedge of hard cheese, a needle and thread, a bit of salt, a strip of cloth, a flint. He took his father's old knife. He had no armor. He wore his plain clothes and his steady will. When he stepped to the road, the village made a narrow lane for him. People touched his arm as he passed. Some spoke his name. He did not look back when he reached the last gate. He knew if he looked, his feet might root to the earth. He walked. The road curved north through low brown hills. It was dry season. The grass was stiff and gray. Crows watched from fence posts and clicked their beaks. The sun rose and warmed his shoulders. He kept a strong, even pace. He did not rush, but he did not slow. He listened to the land and to his own breath. The world felt strange, like the day after a fever when colors seem too bright and sounds come from far away. After an hour, he took the sword from the blanket and held it in his hand. It felt right there. He walked with it bare, not to show off, but because it made him feel awake. The letters along the blade were dim in daylight, but he could still see them. He tried to read them again, but they were not letters he knew. When he looked away and then looked back, they seemed a little different, like water on stone. He spoke in a low voice, feeling foolish and also calm. "What are you?" he asked the sword. "What do you want?" No voice answered. But a thought came, simple and clear. "I am the promise of an end and a beginning. I am not yours. I am with you." It was not words, not truly. It was like a shape in his mind that he could understand. He nodded once. "Then I will use you with care." He reached a fork where an old milestone stood half buried in dirt. A dark stain ran down the stone. It might have been old wine. It might have been blood. Someone had carved an arrow that pointed left toward the river road and scratched a sign, "Toll, by order of the Empire." The right-hand path went up into scrub and rock. No sign marked it. Aris chose the right. He did not wish to pay coin to men who had burned his home. He did not wish to meet a guard post before he had learned what he could do. The path grew narrow and steep. Loose stones slid under his boots. Once he slipped and cut his palm on a sharp edge. He cleaned the cut, wrapped it, and kept going. In the heat of noon, he found a thin patch of shade under a bent pine and drank a little water. He tried to save most of it. He ate 3 dry bites of bread. He slept for 10 breaths with the sword across his lap, then woke as if he had heard a call. He was not alone. A bush on the slope above him moved when there was no wind. Aris kept his eyes half closed and his head still. He listened. A foot on loose grit. A shallow breath. The soft scrape of leather. He was being watched. He did not feel fear. He stood slow and stretched as if stiff from rest. He slid one foot back for balance and lifted the sword a little, still acting as if he only meant to yawn. "Come out," he said, his voice mild, "or shoot. But do not waste our time." A small, thin arrow hissed from the brush, aimed at his shoulder. He turned his wrist and flicked the blade. The arrow snapped and fell. He looked at the bush. "Once his mistake," he called. "Twice his choice." A figure stepped out, hands raised. It was a young woman, maybe his age or a little older. Her hair was cut short and rough. She wore a patched cloak and a knife at her belt. A second, better bow hung over her shoulder. She did not reach for it. Her face was sharp and careful like a fox. "I wanted to see if the stories are true," she said, "about the boy from the border who cut a captain in half." "I do not know what stories will say," Aris said. "I know what happened." "Who are you?" "Mira," she said. "I walk the edges and bring word between places. Some call me a scout. Some call me a thief." "It is the same work," she cocked her head. "May I come closer?" "If you move slow," Aris said. She came down the slope with light steps. Her eyes were on the sword. "What do you call it?" she asked. "Last light." Mira made a small sound. "Old name," she said. "My grandmother told me tales in winter. A blade like a star, carried by a farmer's child when the Black Emperor first rose. In the tales, the blade drank darkness. The child did not live long." Aris's jaw tightened. "Good tale," he said. "I prefer a different ending." "So do I," Mira said. She looked at his cut arm, at his worn boots, at his dry water skin. Her mouth moved as if counting. "You are going north," she said. "To the road that leads to the Iron Way, then to the capital, where the Empire sits like a spider." "Yes. You will die if you go alone," she said. The words were flat, not cruel. "Or you will live and others will die who did not need to. Better to choose where the fight begins. There is a caravan 2 days from here. It carries grain and coin to the garrison at Grey Watch. I have watched it. It is guarded, but not well. If that food does not reach them, the garrison must send men south to take more. They will be weak when they do. People will see. People will speak. A small cut can bleed a giant." Aris listened. The plan felt right. It was not glory. It was work that could hurt the Empire. "How many guards?" he asked. 20, she said. 5 on horses. The rest on foot. 2 wagons. A captain who thinks more about his wine than his duty. "Do you have friends?" "I have 2, she said. "A hunter named Joran who hates the taxmen. A woman named Tala who can set a snare that will make a bear cry. They trust me enough to come when I ask. They do not trust enough to fight a war. But they will take a chance to steal from thieves." Aris looked at the sky. A hawk circled far above. "Show me the road," he said. "We will plan while we walk." Mira's mouth curled. "Good," she said. "The girl in the winter tale would have liked you." She moved with quick feet and pointed the way along the ridge, away from the toll road. As they walked, she told him what she knew, where the streams ran, where the ground broke under a thin skin of brush, where smoke from a cooking fire rose from a hidden hollow. She spoke in short, useful lines. Aris answered the same way. By late afternoon, they reached a narrow valley with a small spring. Two people waited there. A tall man with a beard that looked like it had been cut with a knife in the dark. A broad woman with calm eyes and a bow that looked like it had seen many winters. They stood when Mira waved. "Joran Tala," she said. "This is Aris of Namar. He carries a sword with a name and a reason to use it." Tala looked at the blade and then at his face. "A name is heavy," she said. "Can you carry it?" "I will try," Aris said. "Trying is not the same as doing," Joran muttered, but his eyes were not unkind. "If he can swing that thing half as well as Mira says he can, he will do." They sat by the spring. They shared a small meal, smoked meat, a handful of nuts, a wild onion. Mira drew lines in the dirt. "Here is the bend in the road," she said. "The wagon's slow here. Here is a dry wash. We can hide there. Joran and I will make noise on the far side to pull the riders. Tala will lay a line of caltrops in the road. When the wagons stop, they struck like a winter wind." As the first wagon turned the bend, Joran stepped from his hiding place and broke a dry branch. The snapped limb fell across the road with a loud crack. The riders looked up. Tala's voice rose from the grass, sharp and small, and then she whistled low. Horses reared. The column slowed. Aris did not wait. He stepped into the road with the last light in both hands. The captain of the escort, a man with a round face and a yellow scar, stood at the lead of the group and barked orders. His men reached for swords and spears. Dust rose. The wagons creaked. The plan worked like a net. The horses slid on loose dirt and stopped too close. Tala had laid the caltrops in the center of the road. Several horses stumbled and fell. Men cursed and swore. Joran shouted from the far side, luring the riders away, and two of them took the bait. The confusion was quick and sharp. Aris ran to the first wagon and struck the front axle with the flat of the blade. Metal and wood gave way with a sound like a long sigh. The wagon hit a rut and tipped. Grain spilled in a brown wave. The guards tried to form a line. Aris met them. He did not fight like a soldier. He moved like a man who had pushed a plow for years and had learned where the earth would give. He parried and cut, moved and stepped. The sword felt right in his hands. Each time he touched flesh or leather, the blade slid clean. A soldier dropped, stunned, as if he had been surprised by his own end. Mira fought close by. She moved with a quick calm. Arrows flew from the trees at her signal, and two guards fell with a soft sound. Joran used his long reach to pull riders from horses. Tala drove a short spear again and again into a wheel until the man who held it let go. The captain shouted and lunged. He was a strong man, and his anger made him fast. He struck at Aris with a heavy blade. Aris stepped inside the blow and hooked the captain's arm. The man's balance broke. Aris used his weight and pushed, and the captain fell. The last thing the captain saw was the sword's clean edge. His body slid back and lay still in the dust. Silence fell for one breath. Then the thieves, men who rode with the caravan, scrambled like frightened beetles. They had no plan for a fight. They dropped chests into the dust and ran. Mira and Joran chased them down the track and took what they could. Tala pulled coins from a pouch and tucked them away. Aris stood in the middle of the road and let his chest rise and fall. He tasted dust and iron and sweat. When it was over, they gathered what mattered. The papers were theirs. Map sheets, lists of supplies, orders in the Empire's hand. There were also sacks of grain and a small wooden chest with a few silver coins. They set the wagons on fire so the rest would not be taken by soldiers. The flames burned slow and red, a warning to any who watched. Mira opened one of the papers and read the name aloud. "Greywatch," she said. "They will move supplies from there to a new garrison at Eastward. The papers list routes and timetables. If we burn these and spread the word, farmers will know where the guards will be. They will take their grain and hide it. The garrison will be weak." Aris nodded. It was not a sword-for-sword revenge. It was careful. It was work that could hurt power without killing farmers. He felt a small pride, sharp and steady. He did not think of the men he had cut down. He thought of those who would have to carry their grain under heavier boots if the road stayed open. They split the coin and gave half to the wagon driver who had hidden in the trees. He had not looked like a brave man. He had been frightened. He had been helpful. They left him with a sack. The rest of the band moved north again, carrying paper and grain and an idea. Night came and they camped in a bowl of land where trees held the wind. They ate stew and bread warmed on a small fire. The moon rode low. The sword sat across Eris's lap. He watched the letters glow faint under the dark. He touched them with a finger. The metal was warm still, not only from the day but from something older. Mira sat beside him and did not speak for a while. The others were quiet too. It was not fear. It was a kind of thinking. Tala chewed a strip of tough meat. Joran rolled a small stone in his hands. "You are blooded now," Joran said finally, his voice rough with smoke. "You cut a man's life. It is not undone by a coin. You carry it with you." Eris looked at his hands. A small nick bled where a guard had grazed him. He pressed it with a cloth and felt tired. "I did not want to cut," he said simply. "No one does at first," Mira said. "But you will learn. You will grow or you will break. Many men do both. They slept in shifts. The camp could not rest all at once. Aris woke before dawn and walked alone to the edge of the trees. Mist rose from the ground like a soft cloth. The road they had interrupted lay quiet under the new light. A bird called, single and bright. A rider came up the path alone. He wore a light cloak and rode with slow patience. Eris stepped from the trees and raised his hand. The rider reined in. He was not a soldier. He carried no crest. He had the look of a man used to long roads. His face was older than his years. He held small leather books at his side and a tin cup on his saddle. "Eris of Namar?" he asked, as if he already knew. Eris straightened. He had not spoken his name to many. "Yes," he said. "Who asks?" "My name is Brother Lior," the rider said. "I travel with news and work for those who keep quiet records. I have seen the fires at Namar. I have sat with men who spoke your name in the market." Eris's hands tightened. "What do they say?" "That you carry a blade with a name," Brother Lior said. "That you fought like a man who is not only angry, that the stars watch in a new way. It is foolish to put such things in a market, but the Empire is full of thin ears. They hear pockets and whispers. You must move with care." "Where do you come from?" Aris asked. "From the east," Lior said. "From a town called Halofen. I come with a message for those who would listen. The Empire moves many pieces now. They have a new commander in the north, a man called Varric of Stone. He is not kind. He will not leave land alone. If you want to break lines and burn papers, you will find his men everywhere soon." Aris thought of the dead captain, of the burned houses in Namar, of his mother's soft hands. The world had become wider and sharper. He felt a small thing like a seed crack inside him and reach for air. "What do you want?" he asked Lior. "I want to offer news," the rider said, "and a choice. There are others who resist the Empire in small ways. They meet in secret. They do not have banners. They have lists and names. If you want to find them, go to Halofen. Find the blue lantern by the riverside. Ask for the watcher called Mael. He will listen." Aris looked at the road stretching north. He thought of Namar and his mother, and the spark that had become a fire. He thought of the sword that had answered him with a feeling, not a voice. "Will they help me?" he asked. Brother Lior did not answer with promises. He only touched the sleeve of his cloak and smiled a small, tired smile. "They will help if you can help them. That is how these things move. All men want something. They trade it. They trade danger for safety, truth for silence. They will not make you a king. They will give you a road." Aris took the map Lior offered. The paper was soft and smelled of rain. He folded it and put it in his pack. The sun rose and painted the world in thin gold. He returned to the camp. Mira woke and saw him packing. She did not speak, but she watched his face. Joran and Tala looked up and nodded. "We go to Halofen?" Mira asked. "We go north," Aris said. "To a town with a blue lantern, to find a watcher, to learn a name." Mira smiled, small and fierce. "Then we walk," she said. "And when the Empire moves, we will be a stone in its boot." They broke camp and began again. The road was long, and the world had opened from one small moment into many. Aris felt the sword thrum at his side like a heart that had begun to beat for both ends, an ending and a beginning. He did not yet know which would come first. Ahead the land rolled on, and a dark line of smoke rose far to the west. It might be another village. It might be something worse. He kept walking. The first cut had been made. The next would be deeper. The road to Halofin was long and strange. The land changed with every mile. Hills turned to flat ground to marsh, and the air grew thick and heavy with the smell of wet grass. Flies swarmed near the water. Mud clung to their boots. Even the light felt different here. Pale, silvery, and slow to fade. Eris, Mira, Joran, and Tala walked in a line, quiet most of the time. They were not used to the sound of peace. After weeks of tension and fire, the silence felt wrong, as if the world held its breath. The sword at Eris's side hummed sometimes, faintly, when the wind shifted. He had begun to sense it, how it woke when danger neared, or when anger burned close to the surface of his heart. They passed through small hamlets where people stared but said nothing. Everyone knew the Empire's reach. Strangers were trouble, and words were a kind of currency no one wished to spend. They slept in barns, ate cold bread, and stayed moving. On the 5th night, the road widened and followed a slow, dark river. Reeds whispered on both sides. The moon lay on the water like spilled milk. Mira walked ahead and pointed. "There," she said. "Halofin." The town rose out of the fog like a half-forgotten dream. It was built on stilts and wooden bridges, the kind that groaned when you stepped on them. Lamps burned behind shutters, soft and orange. The air smelled of fish and rain and smoke. Somewhere, a flute played a slow tune that didn't sound happy or sad, just tired. They crossed the main bridge. A guard in a dark cloak stood by the gate. He looked them over, his eyes quick. "Travelers?" he asked. "Only tired ones," Mira said. "We're looking for work and a place to sleep." The guard shrugged. "Keep to the lower docks. Don't cause trouble. Halofin doesn't forgive noise." They entered. The streets were narrow and twisted, but Mira moved as if she'd been there before. She led them through 2 turns past a stall selling dried fish and stopped in front of a small building leaning against a stone wall. Above its door hung a dim blue lantern. The flame inside burned steady, almost too steady, as if it didn't care about the wind. "That's it," she whispered. Inside, the air was warm and smelled faintly of wax and herbs. A few people sat at tables, heads bowed, talking low. A woman behind the counter looked up as they entered. Her eyes were the pale gray of storm clouds. "4 travelers," she said. "Hungry or hunted?" "Both," Mira replied. The woman studied them for a moment, then nodded toward the back. "Upstairs," she said. "3rd door. Knock twice, pause, then once more." They did as she said. The stairs creaked. The hallway smelled of damp wood. Eris knocked as told. The door opened a crack, then wide. A man stood inside. His hair was white, though he was not yet old. His face was sharp and lined, his eyes like river stones, calm, cold, deep. "You carry something," he said before they could speak. His gaze went straight to Eris's side, where the sword rested under cloth. "And not just iron." "I was told to find a watcher named Mael," Eris said. "I am he," the man replied. "Come in." The room was small but neat. Maps hung on the walls, inked with tiny marks and red lines. A single candle burned on the table beside scrolls and a wooden cup half full of tea. Mael sat and motioned for them to do the same. "You are the farmer's son from Neymar," Mael said. "The one who broke a captain in half." Eris frowned. "Stories run fast." Mael gave a dry smile. "Truth runs faster, especially when it frightens the wrong people. The Empire has set a bounty on your head, 500 silver marks." Mira gave a low whistle. "You're expensive, Eris." Eris said nothing. His hand touched the sword as if to make sure it was still there. "I didn't start this to be hunted," he said quietly. "No," Mael said. "But you lit a fire." "Fires call attention. You can either run from it or learn to use it before it burns everything." He rose and crossed the room, pulling a folded map from the wall. "Listen, the Empire is growing desperate. Supply routes are weaker than before, but they've built a fortress near the river pass, a new seat for Commander Varric. If that fortress stands, the northern provinces will fall completely under his control. No one will move grain or messages without his leave." He spread the map on the table. A black mark showed the fortress, shaped like a claw gripping the river bend. "This is the point where you can hurt them," Mael said. "But not with swords alone. You will need allies. You will need mines as much as blades. Joran leaned forward. And you have those allies? Miles' eyes flicked to him. Some, hidden in shadows, watching, waiting. But a blade like yours, boy, he looked at Eris, that could wake hope in people who have forgotten what it means. Eris frowned. Hope can die fast. Yes, Mael said. But so can empires. He poured them each a small cup of tea from the pot. The drink was bitter and strong. You will rest here tonight, he said. Tomorrow I will send you to the river fort. You will not strike yet. You will look, learn, and listen. Find the weak stone in the wall. When you return, we will decide how to break it. Eris nodded slowly. He was not sure if this was wisdom or madness, but both felt better than silence. That night he could not sleep. He went outside onto the narrow bridge behind the inn. Mist rolled off the river. The water glimmered in the moonlight. The sword rested against the rail. Its letters were dim but alive, pulsing faintly with each breath he took. He spoke softly. You were made for this, weren't you? For war, for endings. The air shifted. A faint whisper brushed his mind. Not only for endings. He felt a chill and looked around. The street was empty. Then what are you for? He asked, for choice. The word echoed inside him like a bell. He stared at the blade for a long time. Maybe he was imagining it. Maybe not, but the weight of the sword didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt alive. Behind him, Mira appeared in the doorway, her cloak wrapped tight. Talking to your sword now? She said softly. He smiled a little. It listens better than people. She stepped beside him and leaned on the rail. You ever think maybe it's not the sword they fear? He looked at her. Then what? You, she said. A man who's not afraid to stand. That scares kings more than magic. He didn't answer. The river moved below them, steady and dark. Somewhere in the fog, a bell rang once, deep and slow. By morning, the mist had thickened. They met Mael again in the lower room. He gave them small cloaks dyed gray and a sealed letter. Show this to the ferryman at the broken pier, he said. He will take you close to the fortress. Do not speak my name outside these walls. The Empire listens in places you would not expect. They thanked him and left through the narrow alleys. The blue lantern flickered behind them, small and bright against the fog. At the river's edge, they found the ferryman, an old man with eyes like wet stone. He took the letter, nodded once, and waved them aboard. The boat was flat, its wood dark from years of water. It moved quietly through the mist, oars barely making sound. As they drifted down the wide gray river, Mira whispered, Feels like the world's holding its breath. Eris looked ahead. The fog thinned, and on the far shore, a shape rose from the earth, a wall of black stone, tall and cruel, crowned with banners that bore the mark of the Empire. The fortress of Varric loomed like a wound on the land. Tala's hand went to her bow. Joran muttered a curse. Eris said nothing. His hand rested on the last light. The letters along its blade began to glow, faint but certain, as if they, too, could see what lay ahead. The war had not begun yet, but the river was carrying them straight into its heart, and somewhere inside Eris, the promise of the sword whispered again, Every empire ends. But how it ends, that is the choice. Eris and his companions reached the black fortress of Varric under the cover of fog. The walls were high, guarded by archers and iron gates that never opened for strangers. They hid in the reeds by the river, watching, learning. For 2 days, they studied the fortress. Mira moved through the market disguised as a trader and learned that Varric was storing grain stolen from nearby villages. Joran discovered a hidden drainage tunnel that led under the walls. Tala made a map of guard routes and found that the night watch grew thin after the midnight bell. On the 3rd night, they moved. Eris led them through the tunnel, waist-deep in cold water. The last light glowed faintly, showing the path. They emerged inside the walls behind the storage yards. Soldiers snored by dying fires. Mira signaled. Tala lit a slow-burning fuse under the grain carts. The fire spread fast, climbing ropes and spilling sparks. Within moments, the yard roared with flame. Alarms rang, men shouted, and confusion spread. Amid the chaos, Eris found Commander Varric near the tower stairs. The man was tall, wrapped in dark armor, his eyes hard as glass. "So you are the farmer," Varric said. "The boy who thinks he can break an empire." Eris raised the last light. "Not break," he said. "End what should have ended long ago." Their blades met. Steel shrieked. Varric was strong and trained, but Eris fought with something deeper: memory, loss, and the promise of choice. The sword seemed to move by its own will, guided by something older than either man. In the final strike, the last light cut through Varric's blade and into his chest. The commander fell without sound. The fortress burned around them, its banners curling in the heat. Mira pulled Eris away as dawn rose. "You did it," she said. Eris looked back at the burning tower. "No," he said quietly. "We started it." Behind them, the fire spread to the river, lighting the water in gold. The people of nearby villages would see the smoke and know the Empire could bleed. And somewhere deep inside the sword, the light pulsed once, like a heartbeat waiting for what came next. The Empire has fallen. Its banners turned to ash. The people of the free lands now stand beneath a new dawn. A dawn bought with sacrifice. Eris, the farmer who became a legend, rests at last. His sword, the last light, now sleeps in silence, waiting for the day it will be needed again, because empires may rise and fall. But courage, true courage, never dies. One man changed the fate of a world, and his story will live forever.